Earlier this month, a hoarding situation in Wynyard made headlines. During a wellness check, RCMP discovered a human body and another person who required medical help. And while this is a drastic case, hoarding is a mental health problem that affects many people across this province. It's often a condition that can carry shame and stigma, and people are often embarrassed to admit their relationship with stuff has gotten out of control. It can feel very overwhelming for people. So today on Blue Sky, we're going to hear from people who are seeking help for their hoarding tendencies.
I have been so depressed that I have wished that my house would just burn and I could start all over.
We'll learn about a Saskatoon support group, and we'll talk to a Regina company who gets called in when things get really bad. But as always, we want to hear from you. Have you helped someone navigate a hoarding situation? What helped? How has hoarding, whether your own or a loved one, affected your life? You can call 1-800-716-2221, or you can email bluesky@cbc.ca. There are many people in this province who live in cluttered or disorganized homes. But in some cases, people and animals' health is at risk because of these conditions. When RCMP went into that Wynyard home, they found 36 cats. And they called in Ashlyn Weniger for help. She's with SOS Prairie Rescue.
Yeah, I think ultimately you have to understand at the root of this is the people, and the people are suffering and they have been let down. It's usually access to resources, lack of early prevention, lack of support. These situations are overwhelming for every agency, and it requires multiple organizations and groups, social services like animal welfare. That's just all interconnected, and we talk about the link, whether it's like domestic violence or these neglect or these terrible conditions people live in. The people are failed first, and we then see that in the animals. And so when animals are suffering in our communities, the people are suffering. And it's often like in these situations silently. People don't know what to do. They're ignored until they reach these terrible conditions. And we need to do more as a society to make sure it does not get to this point.
But actually getting help in this province is a lot easier said than done. For folks in Saskatoon, they can join a weekly hoarding support group run by a volunteer who retired from Northern Star Supportive Housing. That organization does not assist with decluttering an individual home, but the support group does offer people insight and skills to cope with hoarding behaviors. I spoke with one of the group members. Her name is Shelley, and she's a grandmother in Saskatoon. And I started by asking her when she realized she had a problem.
My fridge went out. It didn't totally plonk out, but I called the fire department, and they came here, and then...
And why did you call the fire department?
Because of a smell. I didn't want, to get carbon monoxide poisoning, right?
Yeah.
And so then they came here, and then the fireman asked to go downstairs, and I asked if he had to, and he said yes. And so anyways, he did. When he came up, he told me that he would put me on the blacklist, which means that when there would be a fire here, they wouldn't even enter the house to rescue anybody, even upstairs, because he said, I don't even want to lose one of my good men. So that was my biggest wake-up call.
How did you feel when he said that to you?
Well, at the time, I was just thinking about my daughter downstairs being burned alive and not being able to get out.
Yeah.
And that was really, I don't know, what words can't explain, And so then I knew I had to get rid of things and not plan for things that I might never do for another 10 years. The hardest thing for me to get rid of is things that I can use for crafts. I'm a craftaholic, and anything and everything a can be turned into a craft, and so that's why I collect things. And when I was a missionary, I was preparing for summer camp craft kits, 400. And so I would collect a lot of things. And so that kind of got me into the habit of collecting things. And so you can collect absolutely anything. And like last week, I congratulated myself actually, because I threw away suitcases and bags that I wouldn't be able to donate because I know I wouldn't even buy it from a secondhand store. And I didn't cut out any of the zippers, or the clasps, or think I could use the wheels. Um, I actually, was able to throw out the whole suitcase and, the bags. And so it was a success.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
And what did it take to get to that point?
Um, well, knowing how it feels afterwards, knowing that I can do it, and being strong to overcome the urge to do what I've always done, because it's like an addiction, and you have to fight all the time with your first things, thoughts that come on your mind. And so it's a mindset that has to change. And your behavior won't change until your mindset changes, but your mindset won't change until your behavior changes. So, you fake it till you make it, kind of a thing. And you do what is difficult because you know that you're going to be able to breathe easier. And so, like in Weight Watchers, you lose pounds, but in um, with getting rid of stuff from hoarding, you lose pounds, and it gives you more space to breathe that you didn't know that you had such a hard time breathing because of the overwhelming amount of stuff that you have around you.
Shirley, who lives in your house with you?
Now I have my two guinea pigs and my dog.
How long would you say that you've been hoarding?
I would say that I have been collecting. I wouldn't call it hoarding per se, um, but I have been collecting probably since I was 13, because I've always liked to do things with crafts. The hoarding part of it, I would say 35 years.
Was there something that happened? Like, do you remember kind of a shift when it started maybe to impact your relationships or your ability to have people over and that kind of thing?
Oh, definitely. Even now, I've got an almost 2-year-old granddaughter that I just I see often, because they're 5 blocks away. But I just would never want her to come and visit at my house. And I know that normal people would feel crowded in my house and maybe even unwanted because of too much clutter and stuff that's around. It would be them feeling uncomfortable would make me feel uncomfortable too. And I could never have a meal. I tried to have a meal once a year for Christmas, but I've given up on that too.
What does this do with your relationship with your child?
With my children, I guess they just see it as, I have a mental health issue. And so it is something that I guess they have grown up with, that they know it's normal for me, but they are the opposite of me. So they've learned from my mistakes, I guess you could say.
Shirley, it's very common to have hoarding tendencies, but it's not something that people do talk about. And
Yeah.
there is stigma around it, and that's why I'm so respect you for, just being able to speak about it, because obviously it's something that affects a lot of people and it just shouldn't be as taboo as
Yes.
it is. When
Yes.
did you decide to get help, to go join the group?
Oh, that was the fireman incident. That was when I heard about that. I was going to McCarricker for help there with their day programs, and I found out about this group. So that is when I got help.
And how long ago was that?
Oh my goodness. Um, Close to 10 years.
Okay, so you've been going to this group for 10 years, meeting on a weekly basis with other people who want
Right.
help with their own stuff and clutter.
Yes.
What has that group done for you?
Oh my. um, yeah, well, it's been very beneficial because I have been held accountable and been encouraged, and a continual mindset changing. For this type of a problem, you're not going to get rid of it in 4 or 5 months if you've had it for 40 or 50 years. Um, but it's that ongoing keep at it that gives you the success. And when you see the progress, um, when under the steps, um, you can see what is there. It's just such a big difference when you see a dent in spaces that have always been plugged up, because there's always room for something else. That's your mindset that has to change.
Shirley, what do you think it would take for you to be able to host Christmas meal again?
Oh my. Oh, a miracle. um, but just keep at it, never giving up, and just it would just be a thrill. I hardly have words to say for that one.
Do
It,
you,
it would just be amazing.
do you feel like there's enough support? I mean, I don't know if you heard that story. There was a horrible story, earlier this month where there was a situation in Wynyard where a house that was really bad,
Mm.
with hoarding, and they found someone dead in the house and another person in not in good condition, and a lot of cats. And we talked about the cats, but we didn't. And people said this is horrible. People need to be able to get help. But where do people get help? Is it easy for people, if you do realize that you have a mental health problem when it comes to things? Is it easy to get help?
Well, there sure isn't much out there. And, when you're a hoarder, though you have a lot of stuff, you are actually not that well off. And my biggest thing that I found um, was my behavior. The reason why I do this is because I have a hard time saying no to free stuff. And And so my behavior has to change as well as my mindset. And so, I mean, help from God, definitely. One time I prayed, and all of a sudden I saw myself throwing all my balls of yarn into bags of stuff to give away. And you know what? Then the next day, that's exactly what I did. And I ended up giving away at least 100 balls of yarn, to Cambodia. Um, and so that felt so good. But the relief of it and the acknowledgement of it is what helps you. And the encouragement of fellow hoarders and of Liz, who is such a great example and an encouragement to us. I mean, she's doing this even though she's supposed to be retired. She's doing this with us. And I just appreciate so much her help and love and encouragement that she gives us each week.
Well, Shelley, I really appreciate you sharing your perspective today. Thank you.
Okay. Take care.
That was Shelley. She's one of the members of a hoarding support group that meets Tuesdays in Saskatoon. And the Liz that we just heard about is Liz Shufi Stabler. She's retired from the North Star Supportive Housing in Saskatoon, but she continues to run a weekly self-help hoarding group there, and she's in our Saskatoon studio. Liz, welcome to Blue Sky.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So we just heard from Shelley, one of the members of the group that you run. What were you thinking listening to her?
Pardon?
What were you thinking listening to her?
Just how proud I am of how far she's come. When she says how hard it is for her to turn down free things, she came into our room a couple of weeks ago, and there are other groups that meet in that room, and there was a box that said free. And she was so tempted, but she acknowledged that she didn't need it. And I see progress all the time in all the members of the group. They're learning different ways to behave. They're learning different approaches to things. And it may sound simple. You hear a lot of decluttering tips, and it may seem simple to say, when you bring one thing into the house, take out two. That's not simple for people with hoarding issues. There's emotional attachments to letting go of things. Even though they know they don't need them, it's hard for them to let go of things. So for Shelley to actually think twice before taking something out of a free box is really heartwarming for me. I really see the progress. And the biggest thing I've seen in all the group is their insight. They're learning why they acquire. It's hard for them to let go of things, but if they stop bringing more things in, that's a step in the right direction.
Liz, how many people are now part of this group?
We have between 6 and 8 people that attend every week. When I first meet people, I interview them and we talk about what goals they want to work on. And it's one thing to work on goals, but it's another thing to also learn why you are in this position. So we do a couple of things. Everyone is on their own path in terms of goals. So one person, for instance, will say, I'm going to spend 15 minutes a day in my bedroom looking at what I can get rid of. Another person will just say, I'm going to do this portion of my kitchen table. So everyone has their own goals that they work on, and we talk every week about what progress they've made. But I think part of what I see in the group meeting, they've become quite close. They're very supportive of each other. But it's the accountability. They know they want to tell everyone how they did. So it keeps them coming, I think, and it keeps them motivated. Shelley had mentioned safety, how she got started because of safety. That is the one thing that I stress all the time. I keep asking them to go back and make sure hallways are clear. If they had a medical emergency, could an EMT come in with a stretcher? And in some cases, the answer is no, and that scares me. So I keep reminding them to think about safety, think about tripping hazards, think about clearing hallways, and then work on decluttering.
We did have a call from someone who was listening to that interview who said that they checked in with their son, who's a firefighter, and that they wouldn't not come into a place, but clearly it would make it very difficult if they were called in a situation like that.
Yeah, she was definitely told that they wouldn't, and it was the impetus she needed to do something.
I'm Nicole Huck, and you are listening to Blue Sky, and today we are talking about hoarding and the kind of supports that are available in this province. So right now, I'm speaking with Liz Shufi-Stabler, and she runs a self-help hoarding support group in Saskatoon. Very soon, we will be joined by someone who works with Restorix, disaster in Regina, disaster restoration, and he'll be able to explain what happens when things get really bad and they get called in. So if you want to join the conversation, you can call 1-800-716-2221, or you can email bluesky@cbc.ca. Liz, what are some of the situations that lead people to your group? Is there something that happens, like with Liz?
For one individual, she was threatened with eviction, and her landlord said the weight of she collects lots of books. The weight of her books was actually affecting the structure of the building, and they basically gave her a warning that if she didn't start to get rid of some of that weight, that she would be evicted. So she came to us, and we worked with the landlord and assured him that we would work with her. She started to get rid of things, and it was going in the right direction until the landlord stopped checking on her. So she's not acquiring anymore, but unfortunately that motivation was what she needed, and so she's still struggling. But I would say safety and eviction are what brings people. They realize that they have to do something. In some cases, they've heard about a relative who passed away and their children had to come in, and it was a nightmare to get rid of stuff. So they're saying things like, I don't want to leave this for my kids to take care of. But in the long run, it's still overwhelming when you look at all the work that needs to be done, and unfortunately a lot of the people aren't physically able to do some of that stuff.
We know hoarding is much more common than people think, and there can be a lot of embarrassment and shame for people even in admitting that they have a problem. Why is it such a big deal when people actually come to your group?
What do you mean?
Like, how big of a deal is it for people to get over the shame and stigma?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think the initially it's very difficult for them to admit that they have a problem, but then when they see how supportive the group is and there is no judgment, and I think they realize that it's a safe place to be. For a lot of individuals, again, what Shelley said, they want to be able to have people into their home. But also, if you have something wrong with your furnace and you're too embarrassed to call someone in, but you know you have to, but you just feel so guilty about what they're going to think when they see the house. So there is a lot of guilt and there is a lot of embarrassment, but I think the support of all the other people in the group is what helps people.
How have you seen the hoarding affect people's relationships with their loved ones?
Again, like Shelley said, she would love to have her granddaughter over, and she can't. So for some individuals, they don't really explain why they can't have people over. They just kind of talk around it and don't actually admit to the family members that the reason why they can't come is because they're embarrassed. So they just kind of, family members are visiting from out of town and they can't offer a place to stay. So it does affect relationships with families, and for some, they don't admit that they have the problem, and so family members, they don't know what family members think.
Are you always contacted by people themselves, or are you ever contacted by family members of people?
Oh, I get lots of calls from family members. In the last couple of months, I've sadly had calls from family members who live out of town and they've heard that their family member is being evicted. And one call I got, the lady said that her brother was being evicted the next day, and the landlord had no idea how much stuff he had. And the landlord just said, all of this stuff has to go. And she said, what do? I live out of town. Unfortunately, the answer ended up being that he had to get rid of all those things and leave them behind, and the landlord would just have to take all the stuff to the dump. So I get lots of calls from family members, especially those who don't live in Saskatoon, asking what they can do. They may not have heard about the problem, and when they hear about it, there really isn't any time to go in there and spend days, weeks decluttering.
And and just to be clear, you're not going into people's homes with them to help them with the decluttering aspect of it. And I'm sure you're getting calls all the time. So do you think that there's enough supports to help people who are struggling with hoarding behavior in this province?
Absolutely not, no. It's overwhelming for someone to do this alone, but there isn't enough support for somebody to actually go in and help them. They can't afford to hire somebody. So, yeah, there isn't enough support at all. When we first started our hoarding group, we were privileged to receive a grant from Canada Post, and we were able to hire someone who actually did go into the homes. We had about 6 people. She got into their homes. She took pictures with them, and at the end of the 26 weeks, she was able to show them how much they've accomplished. But that was many, many years ago. The funding ran out, and we're not able to go in there and do things. And quite frankly, if I said I will be willing to go into your home and help you, I don't know that everybody would be willing to let me come in. I have no idea how some of our homes look because they were not comfortable with me going in there.
Yeah, we're going to go to the phone lines in just one moment here, but I just want to ask you one more question because you're so aware of the problem. What kind of supports do you think needs to be in place in this province? What would be the most helpful thing if, I don't know who's listening, if a government agency, mental health associations, whatnot, what would be the most helpful thing right now?
I think the most helpful thing would be if there were people available that would go into the homes and work with the individual about getting rid of things. So being respectful of the fact that you can't just go in there and say, this is garbage, you've got 50 spatulas, you don't need 50 spatulas. Somebody that will go in and work with the individual. We had an individual whose landlord provided some support, and the worker's suggestion was that she get tote boxes. And so all of her thousands of books went off the shelves into tote boxes, but they weren't gone through. So it's a little bit of...
And still just as heavy.
Exactly. A little bit of understanding about how this is a serious problem. It's not going to be taken care of right away, and somebody needs to go in and actually help people get things out of the home, but be respectful of enough to understand that it's not easy for them to let go of stuff.
We're going to go to the phone lines where Doug is in Saskatoon. Doug, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
What did you want to add?
I just wanted to say that appreciate the guest in terms of offering services. I had an experience where I was able to help a friend recently. Basically, it was a situation that the house just kind of got out of control and needed some help cleaning it out. And I think what people need is they just need good friends just to be kind and be non-judgmental. And, it took a couple of years before this friend of mine would say, sure, come on over and see what we can do. And it took a fair bit of work, but I was able to successfully get the place cleaned out. And, it's got layers to it, but, you got to, if you have a friend that needs help, you got to do it, serve them. You got to be non-judgmental, and it feels really good if you can help somebody get to the other end of a tough situation.
Absolutely. I think everybody needs a friend like you.
Yeah, Doug, I really appreciate you sharing that. I think gives people hope that they can actually help out a loved one or a friend. So thank you for calling in today.
You bet.
I want to read an email, too. We got an email that says, I'm a member of Liz's group. I choose not to be interviewed because I still have so much shame around being a hoarder. The last time I willingly had anyone into my home was 12 years ago. This is when the hoarding got bad enough to notice and because of the shame around it. Even though I know it is not a moral failing, that it is a mental health disease or challenge, it feels like a moral failing. Words like, if only I had willpower, or if only I was better, run through my mind. If only it was so simple. I get anxious when I try to let go of things. My biggest weakness is books. I love shopping for them. I do not like letting them go. This is even if they're not being used or if they're not needed. It's difficult. It's not that I never let go of things, but it is extremely difficult and anxiety producing. It's not rational. I know that. If it was only about being rational or competent, I would not have a problem. I am successful in many areas of my life, just not in this one. I dislike the word hoarder very much. It comes with a lot of societal preconceptions. Other words I use that are less loaded are collector, unable to let goer, or a person with an anxiety disorder. The group has helped me a lot. I now shop less. I have less shame, even though I still have a lot. I give myself small goals to accomplish and report back to the group. The last thing helps for sure. The goals are small, no big ones like clear out one room or my home, but slow and steady is better than no progress at all. Hearing others' successes around this affliction helps me also. If I had a message to the listening audience right now, it would be, number one, no one wants to be a hoarder. It's a horrible way to live. Number two, it might be easy for you to let go of items, but it is very difficult for us. And number three, when we can't clear spaces, it's not that we love our stuff more than you. It's that we are paralyzed around letting go. And that came to us from a member of Liz's hoarding support group in Saskatchewan. Right now, we've been
Well said.
Yeah, we've been speaking with Liz Schufe-Stabler, and she runs this group in Saskatoon. But I'd like to bring in another guest right now because we know there aren't a ton of options for people in Saskatchewan who need help with cleaning out a hoarding home. And earlier this month, we spoke to a professional organizer in the city. She's done that before, but she admits there aren't many people doing that kind of work. And she's moving to Calgary this spring. So when things get really bad, our next guest might get called in. Mike Payne is the Sales and Marketing and Business Development Manager with Restorix Disaster Restoration in Regina. He's also a project manager, has lots of experience with this, and he's with me in our Regina studio. Mike, welcome to Blue Sky.
Thank you.
So you've been listening to the show. You've been nodding along at times. What have you been thinking?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank Shelley for telling her story. It takes a brave person to kind of come out in public and say what she's dealing with. And kudos to Liz and her group. It's nice to hear that there is actually a group out there that can help these sort of folks. So fantastic to see that those are out there. Restorex is basically, we specialize in fire and water claims disasters in your homes. Through the years of doing that, we came across situations where the hoarding problem would kind of affect our process. So we recognized a need. So we actually have that as part of our service group of services that we'll offer is compassionate cleaning. We don't really like to use hoarding, even though that's what everybody uses. It's kind of compassionate cleaning, which encompasses trauma, estate cleanups, and hoarding.
How often does your company get called in with the stuff? Well,
we don't say get a lot of calls that people will call us and want us to come and help them with the hoarding because of the stigma that goes along with it. Where we'll get the call is if we're coming in to deal with a flood or a fire, and we see that. We'll see a situation like that at least once a week on any of the claims that we'll go to, or we'll get the call in from a home or a family member that has a brother or a sister or parents or that they're dealing with, and they may call us and ask them if we can come out and help. And that's when we'll see those calls come in.
And so how common is it?
At least, I would honestly think that there's a hoarder home, for lack of a better term, on every block in the city. It's whether it's in the richy areas or the low income areas, it really doesn't matter. You could drive by them every day and not know that's a hoarder home, and until you actually walk in the home, and then you'll recognize it as it being an issue.
Yeah, you do have a different vantage point. Most people don't get to go into people's homes,
Yes.
And you're called when things go bad.
Yes.
So when people call you, what kind of situations are you coming into?
Well, a lot of it will be organically through an insurance claim. So, unfortunately, if a person has a flood in their house, we'll get called in to clean up the disaster, and that's when we'll see that it is a hoarding situation. So we'll have to do the cleanup like that. Or as Shelley had mentioned, you'll contact a sub-trade. You need a furnace will conk out. They'll call in a plumber or what have you. Will come in. they won't even go into the home until the hoarding is kind of cleaned up to at least a degree where they feel safe to go into the environment.
And that's not a fix that's very quick often.
Not very, very often. No, it can be pretty large mess that we're walking into. We really kind of see two different sorts of hoarders. There's the organized hoarder, for again, as a lack of a term. These are folks that have a nice clean house, but they collect things. They books or whatever it might be. Everything's stacked up in nice piles. But there's a lot of items in the home. Or else there's kind of the ones that's a little bit more messy. There could be some issues with pets, organic materials. Or the other situation is where we're called in and unfortunately someone's deceased and we've got to come in there and the families has to deal with the home and the property and they have nowhere else to turn, so they'll call us desperately in need of service and we'll provide it.
Is it often people from out of province?
Yes, because people will move away. And grandma still lives in town or what it might be, and unfortunately, if she passes away, and they have to deal with it, and we'll just get a phone call. And a lot of times, the family member may know that this was going on. They don't even want to see it. They want to remember grandma or mom the way she was, not what her house looks like now. So they really want to be kind of at arm's length, and they may not want anything in the home at all. They just want the home cleaned up so it can be resale and then gone to the estate.
Even when I was talking with Shelley, she talked about when her own mom died. And I know that is often a thing for people when their parents die and they have a whole life's worth of things in their house. And all of a sudden, you are trying to figure out what to do with someone else's lifetime of things. So does it all just come into your basement, or does everything go? There's photographs, there's treasures,
Yeah, I can't tell you what's near and dear to everybody's heart. So basically, we have to work with the person that's responsible for the structure on what they want us to keep. But yeah, it makes it really tough.
So when it is a situation where a family member calls, I think it feels more cut and dry when it's an estate and someone is
Absolutely.
Deceased and now you're just getting rid of the things. But when someone's still living there in the house, how does that play out when you show up there?
Well, we'll definitely want a family member, that whoever made the initial contact with us, we'll want to meet them there, and we'll utilize them. I mean, they don't know us from Adam. They don't really want strangers walking into their homes because they are embarrassed. So having that family member there to kind of explain the situation, help us, deal with some of the contents and things like. Because again, at the end of the day, there's no rationale to it. It could be a $2 stuffy that you and I might toss away, but to them that means something to them. That's not for me to say what's important. It's just for me to deal with it as they direct.
Is that really hard?
It is really hard because, I feel like I'm a pretty practical guy, and I can look at something and see that maybe there's no value in it, and trying to explain rationale to someone that maybe doesn't see it the same way that we see it is really tough. I'm not a psychologist. None of us are. We're certainly there to help and assist, and we've got enough experience that we can kind of walk them through the process. But at the end of the day, they need to want to get help, and we need a family member there to help us along that way.
Does it get emotional?
Oh, absolutely. There's lots and lots of tears, especially when it's kind of when it push comes to shove, if it's an eviction situation or what have you. They absolutely will get emotional.
How much does it cost?
Well, again, that'll fluctuate, and it can kind of depends on the scope and scale of the situation. If we're not dealing with lots of biological material, i.e., pet and human waste or what have you, or rotting food, which we do run into on a regular basis, it'll be significantly cheaper. It's some disposal fees and labor, but it'll run anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000. It all really depends on the scope and scale. Our company will be very honest with who's ever responsible. We'll give them the numbers ahead of time, and again, want to work closely with them.
And how long does it generally take to clear out a home?
It could take a week, it could take 2 weeks. It really all depends on what they want us to do. If it's just removal of items in the home, as long as we don't have to, nitpick through every little item to make sure that it is disposable, we can go pretty fast. And if there's some structural issues that we have to deal with, then obviously that'll take some more time. But it could take anywhere from a week to 2 weeks.
Okay. And my last question for you just is how has this work changed your own relationship with things?
Well, I've never been a person to hold on to stuff that is unnecessary or is kind of obsolete for myself. But you can certainly recognize in yourself and maybe in friends and family if they're kind of holding on to things a little bit too longer than necessary. You can kind of say, hey guys, this is becoming out of hand. Let's kind of remove these items, or let's kind of start doing the cleanup now. Again, for families, if you've got a family member that you see with that now, try to deal with it now while they're still maybe with us, so that it doesn't all fall on the estate or the estate people that are responsible for it.
I'm talking right now with Mike Payne, and he's with Restorex Disaster Restoration in Regina. I'd like to go back to the phone lines. Aaron is on the line in Regina. Aaron, welcome to Blue Sky.
Thank you. I had a question for your guests. I work in service. I go to people's homes, and I have come across a couple hoarder homes. There's one that still bugs me. It was a lot of newspaper and magazines. Like there was so many as I was being led through the home, I couldn't tell when I was entering and leaving a room. And I hummed and hawed for a long time. Like, should I call the fire department to help these people? Or what does somebody do when they're doing work in a person's house, and then you get there and you find out it's a really bad hoarding issue?
Okay, well, I don't know if our guests will have the answer for that, but Liz, I'm curious about what your thoughts are.
Well, my thoughts are, for their own safety, it should be addressed, but I would address it with them and in a respectful way. Ask them if they need help, explain that you're concerned. Obviously, it is an issue, but if you bring in the fire department, who knows what that'll entail in terms of them having to get rid of all kinds of stuff and being given ultimatums. So you want to be respectful, but I would say I would address it with them and say that you feel you should say something because you're concerned about their safety.
And it is interesting, though, Liz, because you said that sometimes it is that threat that is the instigating thing, the thing that makes someone actually take action, even though they know it's a problem. What would happen if he called the fire department?
Well, we had an individual who happened to have to call the police for a mental health issue, and the police saw the condition of the apartment, and they called the fire department. And he was lucky to have a very respectful person with the fire department who said he had so many months to get rid of things, or they would come in and not even look at the things. They would just get rid of them. So sometimes that threat is really important. It's painful, but for safety reasons for this individual, they were able to work with him and give him extensions when he couldn't quite get things out. He realized that he didn't need any of those things. A lot of it was garbage, and he made trip after trip to the dump. But he got rid of stuff, and the fire department came in and declared his house was safer, and they were pleased with the progress he'd made. So sometimes you need that ultimatum, especially when it comes to safety.
Mike, it's been interesting, but when I was talking with Shelley earlier, it was easier for her to get rid of the yarn when she knew it was going to Cambodia. It was easier for her to get rid of things when she knew that they were being used. What's really hard is when you know that the good things are going to the dump.
Yes.
But everything that you haul out is going to the dump, is it not?
Absolutely. It's not our property. If there is some sort of contamination with the product, we wouldn't want to do anything with it. Sometimes what will happen is we have some technologies and some techniques that we can actually clean a lot of content. So if a homeowner or the family or the estate says, I really want these pictures or this ornament or this whatever it might be, we can clean and sanitize those things for the homeowners. But the typical bric-a-brac that you might see in everybody's home, or even some of the appliances. I mean, the fridges and stoves can be in pretty raunchy shape, so those will be disposed of. And we're not just dealing with mess and debris. We're dealing with odor. There's a lot of odor that comes along with some of these situations. We've got a partner company called BioSweep Saskatchewan that we utilize when we kind of come across these stubborn odors that we can't remove. They can eradicate it. So there are companies out there that will assist in these situations. situations. You just have to find them. Thank God to hear from Liz that there is a society out there that will help them. I'm going to actually get her number after this is over so that if we run into a situation, I can kind of have those people reach out to her as well. So.
Yeah, and I want to just say when I was researching for this show, I learned that the Canadian Mental Health Association here in Regina runs a neat and tidy support group, where it says so on their website, and it's to help people navigate through hoarding, organizing, and tidying up. And according to their website, they run a monthly meeting at 1888 Angus Street in Regina. You're supposed to call the office to register. I'll also say that I've been trying to speak to someone who runs that program, and I've called several times, and I haven't heard back from anybody. So I don't know what to say about how quickly you might hear back if you do have a problem.
Yeah.
But according to their website for the Canadian Mental Health Association, there is a program in Regina as well that's supposed to be giving some support to people. Aaron, we had the caller Aaron in Regina on the line. Aaron, was that helpful?
Yeah, but so like they're a customer, and I'm just showing up for an hour or two, so I could maybe offer them the phone numbers for the Regina support group you just mentioned. But like this one that was all magazines and newspapers, what worried me is if they had a fire, that house is going to go up like a book of matches.
Yeah, Aaron, I appreciate that I appreciate that you're thinking about, like, it's coming from a place of concern for someone's health and safety, and probably if you had that discussion with them, saying that you've even heard this conversation and you know what a risk factor that could be if there was a fire. But you're not alone, Aaron. There's lots of people listening to this show right now who have a family member or a friend who does need help, and everybody's trying to figure out.
Absolutely.
So we did get that one call from somebody who was able to slowly help their friend clear out the place and make it probably a nicer place to live for him. And I'm just really grateful. We're coming up to the end of the show here. But Liz, you're with the support group in Saskatoon. Do you have one final message for people listening to this show today?
I would say my final message is, even if it's a small portion of a corner of your desk that you're clearing off, it's something. Don't be overwhelmed by just having to do everything. But I would also like to add, for individuals that I hear from who aren't comfortable coming to the group, I do respond by email, and I'll send them tips for how to set up goals. So I'm comfortable with Nicole sharing my email. And
okay, so if people are listening, you can email bluesky@cbc.ca, and we'll pass that along. So today I'll be talking to Liz Schufi-Stabler. She runs the self-help hoarding support group in Saskatoon, and Mike Payne with Restorex in disaster restoration in Regina.